The Secret Doctrine. The Secret Doctrine, the synthesis of science, religion, and philosophy. By H.P. Blavatsky, author of Isis Unveiled. There is no religion higher than truth. Vol. 2 Anthropogenesis. 3523 kb Vol. I Cosmogenesis scanned and edited from a facsimile of the original edition of 1888 The Theosophy Company, Los Angeles, California. This electronic version of The Secret Doctrine follows the pagination and style of the facsimile of the original edition of 1888 except for the footnotes, instead of breaking up the footnotes, that are continued on other pages, due to lack of space, on the pages printed in paper books. We placed all the information for each footnote together on the page of its origin. Editor Theosophy Co. of Arizona 2005 London, The Theosophical Publishing Company, Limited. 7, Duke Street, Adelphi, W.C. William Q. Judge, 117, Nassau Street, New York. The manager of the Theosophist. Adi R., Madras. 1888 entered according to Act of Congress in the year 1888, by H. P. Blavatsky, in the office of the Librarian of Congress at Washington, D.C. W.L. T. pound $2 org 3 Unidentified to all crew Jesopljadsk, 3 N Eberb country. And NB of Abet P.S. race, J4 T. Fiep Kalave T. Fortf. A and B for Tfm TT Tos Recorbeb. Table of Contents. Volume 2nd. Preliminary Notes. On the archaic stanzas, and the 4 prehistoric continents. 1. The imperishable sacred land. 6. The Hyperborean. 7. Lemuria. 7. Atlantis. 8. The tropics at the pole. 11. Book 2 Part I. Anthropogenesis. Stanzas from the Book of Jinn. 15. The beginnings of sentient life. 22. Man, the third Logos. 25. The celestial governors of humanity. 29. Parent stars and sister planets. 33. 3 kinds of light. 35. The numbers of creation. 39. The first war in heaven. 45. 2 antediluvian astronomers. 47. Stanza 2. Nature unaided fails. 52. Who are the flames? 63. 8. The chronology of the Brahmins. 66. The race that never dies. 67. Cosmogony, an intelligent plan. 73. Stanza 3. Attempts to create man. 75. The various classes of creators. 77. Man, a god in animal form. 81. Fires, sparks, and flames. 83. Stanza 4. Creation of the first races. 86. Pitries of the gods and demons. 89. What Prometheus symbolized. 95. The hammer of Thor. 99. The divine rebels. 103. Man's father, the sun. 105. Stanza V. The evolution of the second race. 109. The secret work of Chirum. 113. The outgrowth of races. 117. Leda, Castor, and Pollux. 121. Yahovah androgynous. 125. The Jewish God name. 127. Stanza 6. The evolution of the sweat-born. 131. Bisexual reproduction. 133. The virgin third race. 135. A few words about deluges and Noahs. 138. Various deluges. 141. Could men exist 18 million years ago? 148. Spontaneous generation. 151. The solar system in the Puranas. 155. Oceans of carbonic acid. 159. Stanza 7. From the semi-divine down to the first human races. 161. Monads and rounds. 167 A suggestive explanation. 171 9 A saint hypnotized. 175 Sweat bomb and androgynes. 177 Stanza 8 Evolution of the animal mammalians the first. 180 Archaic zoology. 183 The sin of the mindless man. 185 What may be the objections to the foregoing. 185 Stanza 9. The final evolution of man. 191 The hairy men of China. 195 The separation of sexes. 197 Primeval language. 199 Edens, serpents, and dragons. 202 The Garden of Eden ecology. 203 Flying camels. 205 The sons of God and the sacred island. 220 The magicians of Atlantis. 223 Stanza X The history of the fourth race. 227 The mysteries among the Mayas. 229 Satanic myths. 233 Mahasura and Satan. 237 Man, the pale shadow of God. 243 The curse of Vasishta. 247 Archaic teachings in the Puranas and Genesis. 251 From worm to man. 255 Identity of human and animal embryos. 259 A panoramic view of the early races. 263 The natural fall. 267 The symbolism of Cronus. 269 X Stanza X continued. 271 The Golden Age. 273 No devils outside humanity. 275 The seven virgin youths. 281 The races of men not all human. 287 The races with the third eye. 289 Occult physiology. 295 The evolution of the eye. 299 The third eye is now a gland. 301 The primeval manus of humanity. 307 The four earlier races. 311 The esoteric meaning of /fish. 313 Stanza 11. The civilization and destruction of the fourth and fifth races. 316 Degeneration of mankind. 319 Atlantis now ocean floor. 325 Changes of climate. 329 How to read symbols. 335 The antediluvian Buddhas. 339 Cyclopean ruins and colossal stones as witnesses to giants. 341 Living, speaking, and moving stones. 345 It takes a god to become a man. 349 Stanza 12. The fifth race and its divine instructors. 351 The astronomical dragon. 353 Serpents and dragons under different symbolisms. 355 The sidereal and cosmic glyphs. 357 Our divine instructors. 365 The origin of the satanic myth. 378 Noah was a Kabir, hence he must have been a demon. 390 11 The oldest Persian traditions about the polar, and the submerged continents. 393 Western speculations founded on the Greek and Puranic traditions. 402 The curse from a philosophical point of view. 409 Additional fragments from a commentary on the verses of stanza 12. 423 The oldest records about Atlantis. 425 The doom of Atlantis. 427 The races, sub-races, and family races. 434 Conclusion. 437 Book 2. Part 2. The archaic symbolism of the world religions. Esoteric tenets corroborated in every scripture. 449-16. Adam ad Ami. 452 The Kabbalistic Four Atoms. 457-17. The Holy of Holies, its degradation. 459 Christian symbolism. 463 The four-faced Brahma. 465 The Old and the New Jehovah. 469-18. On the myth of the fallen angel, in its various aspects. 475. The evil spirit, who and what. 475 The gods of light proceed from the gods of darkness. 483 The many meanings of the war in heaven. 492-19. Is Pleroma Satan's lair? 506 Jehovah's personating spirit. 509 The Mysterium Magnum. 512 The Logos and Satan are one. 515 12xx. Prometheus the Titan. 519 His origin in ancient India. 519 The boon he gives. 523 XXI. Anoikian Henok. 529 XXII. The symbolism of the mystery names Iao and Jehovah. 536 Cross and Circle. 545 The fall of the cross into matter. 553 XXIII. The Upanishads in Gnostic literature. 563 When time be no longer. 565 The divine self's wisdom. 566 XXIV. The cross and the Pythagorean decade. 573 Poseidon's five ministers. 577 The mystery of the number 6. 583 The cross and Christian afterthought. 587. XXV The mysteries of the Hebdomad. 590 Saptaparna. 590 The Tetractys in relation to the heptagon. 598 The septenary element in the Vedas. 605 The septenary in the exoteric works. 611 7 in astronomy, science, and magic. 618 The seven souls of the Egyptologists. 630 Book 2. Part High. Addenda. Science and the Secret Doctrine Contrasted. Archaic, or Modern Anthropology. 645 The Occult and the Modem Doctrines. 649 Science is silent on every problem. 653 13-2. The ancestors mankind is offered by science. 656 Various modes of reproduction. 659 Apathecoid man wanted. 669 Plastidular souls and conscious nerve cells. 670 The atoms of our father Bathybius. 674 3. The fossil relics of man and the anthropoid ape. 675 Insurmountable difficulties for the Darwinians. 677 The argument of rudimentary organs. 683 Epitomized history in the fetus. 684 The evidence of skulls. 687 4. Duration of the geological periods, race cycles, and the antiquity of man. 690 Sayce sketch of chronology. 691. A. Speculations on the age of the globe. 694. B. On chains of planets and their plurality. 699 States of consciousness. 701 Worlds mentioned in the Bible. 703. C. Esoteric geological chronology. 709 Parallelism of life. 711 The two sciences contrasted. 713 The Paleolithic land seer. 721 Astral man the solution. 728 The Kabbalists and science. 730 V Organic evolution and creative centers. 731 Hyan Kohans and these centers. 732, A. Origin and evolution of the Mammalia. 734, B. The European Paleolithic races whence and how distributed. 738 14:6. Giants, civilizations, and submerged continents traced in history. 742 A mysterious nation. 743 The seven Sabbaths. 747 Revelation and the secret doctrine. 748 Druidic stones. 752 Races of giants. 755 Mazdeen seven earths. 759, a. Statements about the sacred islands. 760 The heirloom of Atlantis. 763 The God-bearing land. 765 The power of names. 767 The sons of Kylus and Terra. 769 Southern and Northern Atlantis. 770 Niobe and her children. 771 The cycles of time. 773. 7 Scientific and geological proofs of the existence of several submerged continents. 778 Corroborations of occultism by geology. 779 Evidence of the flora. 781 Atlantis necessary to ethnology. 783 Astrea falls on her head. 785 Communication between South Sea Islands. 788 Evidence of language. 790 Ragan explains Masonic symbols. 795 The end of fitting prelude to truth. 798 15 O'Urn, Didac, Kujay. 16 Modern science insists upon the doctrine of evolution, so do human reason and the secret doctrine, and the idea is corroborated by the ancient legends and myths, and even by the Bible itself when it is read between the lines. We see a flower slowly developing from a bud, and the bud from its seed. But whence the latter, with all its predetermined program of physical transformation, and its invisible, therefore spiritual forces which gradually develop its form, color, and odor? The word evolution speaks for itself. The germ of the present human race must have pre-existed in the parent of this race, as the seed, in which lies hidden the flower of next summer, was developed in the capsule of its parent flower. The parent may be but slightly different, but it still differs from its future progeny. The antediluvian ancestors of the present elephant and lizard were, perhaps, the mammoth and the plesiosaurus. Why should not the progenitors of our human race have been the giants of the Vedas, the Voluspa, and the Book of Genesis? While it is positively absurd to believe the transformation of species to have taken place according to some of the more materialistic views of the evolutionists, it is but natural to think that each genus, beginning with the mollusks and ending with man, had modified its own primordial and distinctive forms. Isis Unveiled, Volume I, p. 153. On the archaic stanzas, and the four prehistoric continents. Facies totius universi, quamvis infinitis modis variat, monetum and semper idem. Spinoza. The stanzas, with the commentaries thereon, in this book, the second, are drawn from the same archaic records as the stanzas on cosmogony in Book I. As far as possible a verbatim translation is given, but some of the stanzas were too obscure to be understood without explanation. Hence, as was done in Book I, while they are first given in full as they stand, when taken verse by verse with their commentaries an attempt is made to make them clearer, by words added in brackets, in anticipation of the fuller explanation of the commentary. As regards the evolution of mankind, the secret doctrine postulates three new propositions, which stand in direct antagonism to modern science as well as to current religious dogmas. It teaches, a. the simultaneous evolution of 7 human groups on 7 different portions of our globe, b. the birth of the astral, before the physical body, the former being a model for the latter, and, c. that man, in this round, preceded every mammalian, the anthropoids included in the animal kingdom *** see Genesis ch. 2, v 19. Adam is formed in verse 7, and in verse 19 it is said, "Out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field, and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them." Thus man was created before the animals, for the animals mentioned in chapter I are the signs of the zodiac, while the man, male and female, is not man, but the host of the Sephiroth, forces, or angels, made in his, God's, image and after his likeness. The Adam, man, is not made in that likeness, nor is it so asserted in the Bible. Moreover, the second Adam is esoterically a septenary which represents 7 men, or rather groups of men. For the first Adam the Kadmon is the synthesis of the 10 Sephiroth. Of these, the upper triad remains in the archetypal world as the future Trinity, while the 7 lower Sephiroth create the manifested material world, and this septenate is the second Adam. Genesis, and the mysteries upon which it was fabricated, came from Egypt. The God of the first chapter of Genesis is the Logos, and the Lord God of the second chapter the creative Elohim, the lower powers. 2. The secret doctrine. The secret doctrine is not alone in speaking of primeval men born simultaneously on the 7 divisions of our globe. In the divine Pymander of Hermes we find the same 7 primeval men evolving from nature and heavenly man, in the collective sense of the word, namely, from the creative spirits, and in the fragments, collected by George Smith, of Chaldean tablets on which is inscribed the Babylonian legend of creation. In the first column of the Kutha tablet, 7 human beings with the faces of ravens, black, swarthy complexions, whom the 7 great gods created, are mentioned. Or, as explained in lines 16 and 18, in the midst of the earth they grew up and became great. 7 kings, brothers of the same family. These are the 7 kings of Edom to whom reference is made in the Kabbalah, the first race, which was imperfect, i.e., was born before the balance, sexes, existed, and which was therefore destroyed. Zohar, Sifra Geniauta, Idris Suda, 2928, Lakabt, p. 205. 7 kings, brethren, appeared and begot children, 6,000 in number were their peoples. Hibbert Lectures, p. 372. The god Nergas, death, destroyed them. How did he destroy them? By bringing into equilibrium, or balance, those who did not yet exist, Sifra Geniauta. They were destroyed, as a race, by being merged in their own progeny, by exudation, that is to say, the sexless race reincarnated in the bisexual *. Thus saith Pymander, this is the mystery that to this day was hidden. Nature being mingled with the heavenly man, Elohim, or Dhyanis, brought forth a wonder. 7 men, all males and females, hermaphrodite, according to the nature of the 7 governors, Book 2. v. 29, or the 7 hosts of the Patris or Elohim, who projected or created him. This is very clear, but yet, see the interpretations of even our modern theologians, men supposed to be intellectual and learned. In the theological and philosophical works of Hermes Trismegistus, Christian Neoplatonist, a work compiled by John David Chambers, of Oriel College, Oxford, the translator wonders for whom these 7 men are intended. He solves the difficulty by concluding that, as the original pattern man, Adam Kadmon Ofch I Genesis, was masculine-feminine, the 7 may signify the succeeding patriarchs named in Genesis, p. 9. A truly theological way of cutting the Gordian knot. 3. The Lemnos-born Kabiri. Potentially, the latter in the androgynes, these again in the sexual, the later third race. For further explanation, vide infra. Were the tablets less mutilated, they would be found to contain word for word the same account as given in the archaic records and in Hermes, at least as regards the fundamental facts, if not as regards minute details, for Hermes is a good deal disfigured by mistranslations. It is quite certain that the seeming supernaturalism of these teachings, although allegorical, is so diametrically opposed to the dead-letter statements of the Bible *, as well as to the latest hypotheses of science, that it will evoke passionate denial. The occultists, however, know that the traditions of esoteric philosophy must be the right ones, simply because they are the most logical, and reconcile every difficulty. Besides, we have the Egyptian books of Thoth, and Book of the Dead, and the Hindu Puranas with the 7 Manas, as well as the Chaldeo-Assyrian accounts, whose tiles mention 7 primitive men, or atoms, the real meaning of which name may be ascertained through the Kabbalah. Those who know anything of the Samothracian mysteries will also remember that the generic name of the Kabiri was the Holy Fires, which created on 7 localities of the island of Electria, or Samothrace, the Kabir bomb of the Holy Lemnos, the island sacred to Vulcan. According to Pindar, see Philosophomena, Miller's edition, p. 98, this Kabir, whose name was Adamus, was, in the traditions of Lemnos, the type of the primitive man bomb from the bosom of the earth. He was the archetype of the first males in the order of generation, and was one of the 7 autochthonous ancestors or progenitors of mankind. Ibid. p. 108, if, while coupling with this the fact that Samothrace was colonized by the Phoenicians, and before them by the mysterious Pelasgians who came from the east, one remembers also the identity of the mystery gods of the Phoenicians, Chaldeans, and Israelites, it will be easy to discover whence came also the confused account of the Noachian deluge. It has become undeniable of late that the Jews, who obtained their primitive ideas about creation from Moses, who had them from *, as it is now asserted that the Chaldean tablets, which give the allegorical description of creation, the fall, and the flood, even to the legend of the Tower of Babel, were written before the time of Moses. C. G. Smith's Chaldean account of Genesis, p. 86, how can the Pentateuch be called a revelation? It is simply another version of the same story. For the secret doctrine. The Egyptians compiled their Genesis and first cosmogonic traditions when these were rewritten by Ezra and others from the Chaldeo-Akkadian account. It is, therefore, sufficient to examine the Babylonian and Assyrian cuneiform and other inscriptions to find also therein, scattered here and there, not only the original meaning of the name Adam, Admi, or Adami *, but also the creation of 7 atoms or roots of men, bomb of Mother Earth, physically, and of the divine fire of the progenitors, spiritually or astrally. The Assyriologists, ignorant of the esoteric teachings, could hardly be expected to pay any greater attention to the mysterious and ever-recurring number 7 on the Babylonian cylinders, than they paid to it on finding the same in Genesis and the Bible. Yet the number of the ancestral spirits and their 7 groups of human progeny are there, notwithstanding the dilapidated condition of the fragments, as plainly as they are to be found in Pymander and in the book of the concealed mystery of the Kabbalah. In the latter Adam Kadmon is the Sephirothal tree, as also the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that tree, says verse 32, hath around it 7 columns, or palaces, of the 7 creative angels operating in the spheres of the 7 planets on our globe. As Adam Kadmon is a collective name, so also is the name of the man Adam. Says George Smith in his Chaldean account of Genesis, the word Adam used in these legends for the first human being is evidently not a proper name, but is only used as a term for mankind. Adam appears as a proper name in Genesis, but certainly in some passages is only used in the same sense as the Assyrian word, p. 86. Moreover, neither the Chaldean nor the biblical deluge, the stories of Xisuthros and Noah, is based on the universal or even on the Atlantean deluges, recorded in the Indian allegory of Vaivaswata Manu. They are the exoteric allegories based on the esoteric mysteries of Samothrace. If the older Chaldees knew the esoteric truth concealed in the Puranic legends, the other nations were aware only of the Samothracian mystery, and allegorized it. They adapted it to their astronomical and anthropological, or rather phallic, notions. Samothrace is known historically to have been famous in antiquity for a deluge, which submerged the country and reached the top of the highest mountains, an event which happened before the age of the Argonauts. It was overflowed very *vidi Adam Adami, in part 2 of this volume. 5. The secrets of Kauinjik. Suddenly by the waters of the Euxine, regarded up to that time as a lake *, but the Israelites had, moreover, another legend upon which to base their allegory, the deluge, that transformed the present Gobi desert into a sea for the last time, some 10 or 12,000 years ago, and which drove many Noahs and their families onto the surrounding mountains. As the Babylonian accounts are now only restored from hundreds of thousands of broken fragments, the mound of Kauinjik alone having yielded to Layard's excavations over 20,000 fragments of inscriptions, the proofs here cited are comparatively scanty, yet such as they are, they corroborate almost every one of our teachings, certainly 3, at least. These are, 1. That the race which was the first to fall into generation was a dark race, Zalmatkigiwakli, which they call the Adami or dark race, and that Sarku, or the light race, remained pure for a long while subsequently. 2. That the Babylonians recognized two principal races at the time of the fall, the race of the gods, the ethereal doubles of the Pitris, having preceded these two. This is Sir H. Rawlinson's opinion. These races are our second and third root races. 3. That these 7 gods, each of whom created a man, or group of men, were the gods imprisoned or incarnated. These gods were, the god Zi, the god Ziku, noble life, director of purity, the god Merku, noble crown, savior from death of the gods, later on, imprisoned, and the creator of the dark race which his hand has made, the god Libzu wise among the gods, the god Nissi. And the god Sahab, and he or Sa, their synthesis, the god of wisdom and of the deep, identified with Owen's Dagon, at the time of the fall, and called, collectively, the Demiurge, or Creator. See Chaldean account Genesis, p. 82. There are 2 creations so called, in the Babylonian fragments, and Genesis having adhered to this, one finds its first 2 chapters distinguished as the Allahite and the Jehovite creations. Their proper order, however, is not preserved in these or in any other exoteric accounts. Now these creations, according to the occult teachings, refer respectively to the formation of the primordial 7 men by the progenitors, the Pitris or Elohim, and to that of the human groups after the fall. See Pliny, 4, c. 12, Strabo, 10, Herodotus, 7, c. 108, Pausanias, 7, c. 4, etc. 6. The secret doctrine. All this will be examined in the light of science and comparisons drawn from the scriptures of all the ancient nations, the Bible included, as we proceed. Meanwhile, before we turn to the anthropogenesis of the prehistoric races, it may be useful to agree upon the names to be given to the continents on which the 4 great races, which preceded our Adamic race, were born, lived, and died. Their archaic and esoteric names were many, and varied with the language of the nationality which mentioned them in its annals and scriptures. That which in the Vendidad, for instance, is referred to as Aryanum Viago, see Bund. 79, 12, wherein was born the original Zoroaster * is called in the Puranic literature Svetadwipa, Mount Meru, the abode of Vishnu, etc., etc., and in the secret doctrine is simply named the land of the gods under their chiefs, the spirits of this planet. Therefore, in view of the possible, and even very probable confusion, that may arise, it is considered more convenient to adopt, for each of the 4 continents constantly referred to, a name more familiar to the cultured reader. It is proposed, then, to call the first continent, or rather the first terra firma on which the first race was evolved by the divine progenitors, the imperishable sacred land. The reasons for this name are explained as follows: this sacred land, of which more later on is stated never to have shared the fate of the other continents, because it is the only one whose destiny it is to last from the beginning to the end of the Manvantara throughout each round. It is the cradle of the first man and the dwelling of the last divine mortal, chosen as a Sishta for the future seed of humanity. Of this mysterious and sacred land very little can be said, except, perhaps, according to a poetical expression in one of the commentaries, that the pole star has its watchful eye upon it, from the dawn to the close of the twilight of a day of the great breath. By original we mean the Amshaspend, called Zarathustra, the lord and ruler of the Vara made by Yurna in that land. There were several Zarathustra or Zerdists, the Dabistan alone enumerating 13, but these were all the reincarnations of the first one. The last Zoroaster was the founder of the fire temple of Azarkshir and the writer of the works on the primeval sacred Magian religion destroyed by Alexander. In India called the Day of Brahma. 7. Hyperboreas and Lemuria. 2. The Hyperborean will be the name chosen for the second continent, the land which stretched out its promontories southward and westward from the North Pole to receive the second race, and comprised the whole of what is now known as Northern Asia. Such was the name given by the oldest Greeks to the far-off and mysterious region, whither their tradition made Apollo the Hyperborean travel every year. Astronomically, Apollo is of course the sun, who, abandoning his Hellenic sanctuaries, loved to visit annually his faraway country, where the sun was said never to set for 1/2 of the year. Igagar nuto tekai fieto eisi kiliilkoi, says a verse in the Odyssey, x86. But historically, or better, perhaps, ethnologically and geologically, the meaning is different. The land of the Hyperboreans, the country that extended beyond Boreas, the frozen-hearted god of snows and hurricanes, who loved to slumber heavily on the chain of Mount Rapheus, was neither an ideal country, as surmised by the mythologists, nor yet a land in the neighborhood of Scythia and the Danube. It was a real continent, a bona fide land which knew no winter in those early days, nor have its sorry remains more than one night and day during the year, even now. The nocturnal shadows never fall upon it, said the Greeks, for it is the land of the gods, the favorite abode of Apollo, the god of light, and its inhabitants are his beloved priests and servants. This may be regarded as poetized fiction now, but it was poetized truth then. 3. The third continent, we propose to call Lemuria. The name is an invention, or an idea, of Mr. P. L. Sclater, who asserted, between 1850 and 1860, on zoological grounds the actual existence, in prehistoric times, of a continent which he showed to have extended from Madagascar to Ceylon and Sumatra. It included some portions of what is now Africa, but otherwise this gigantic continent, which stretched from the Indian Ocean to Australia, has now wholly disappeared beneath the waters of the Pacific, leaving here and there only some of its highland tops which are now islands. Mr. A. R. Wallace, the naturalist, extends the Australia of tertiary periods to New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, and perhaps to Fiji, and from its marsupial types he infers a connection with the northern continent during the *C. Volker, Mythological Geography, pp. 145 to 170. 8. The Secret Doctrine. Secondary period, writes Mr. C. Gould in Mythical Monsters, p. 47. The subject is treated at length elsewhere. 4. Atlantis is the fourth continent. It would be the first historical land, were the traditions of the ancients to receive more attention than they have hitherto. The famous island of Plato of that name was but a fragment of this great continent. See Esoteric Buddhism. The fifth continent was America, but, as it is situated at the antipodes, it is Europe and Asia Minor, almost coeval with it, which are generally referred to by the Indo-Aryan occultists as the fifth. If their teaching followed the appearance of the continents in their geological and geographical order, then this classification would have to be altered. But as the sequence of the continents is made to follow the order of evolution of the races, from the first to the fifth, our Aryan root race, Europe must be called the fifth great continent. The secret doctrine takes no account of islands and peninsulas, nor does it follow the modern geographical distribution of land and sea. Since the day of its earliest teachings and the destruction of the great Atlantis, the face of the earth has changed more than once. There was a time when the delta of Egypt and northern Africa belonged to Europe, before the formation of the Straits of Gibraltar, and a further upheaval of the continent, changed entirely the face of the map of Europe. The last serious change occurred some 12,000 years ago. It is to be remarked, however, that Mr. Wallace does not accept Mr. Sclater's idea, and even opposes it. Mr. Sclater supposes a land or continent formerly uniting Africa, Madagascar, and India, but not Australia and India, and Mr. A. R. Wallace shows, in his Geographical Distribution of Animals and Island Life, that the hypothesis of such a land is quite uncalled for on the alleged zoological grounds. But he admits that a much closer proximity of India and Australia did certainly exist, and at a time so very remote that it was certainly pre-tertiary, and he adds in a private letter that no name has been given to this supposed land. Yet the land did exist, and was of course pre-tertiary, for Lemuria, accepting this name for the third continent, had perished before Atlantis had fully developed, and the latter sunk and its chief portions had disappeared before the end of the Miocene period. One more coincidence. Now it is proved that in geologically recent times, this region of North Africa was in fact a peninsula of Spain, and that its union with Africa, proper, was effected on the north by the rupture of Gibraltar, and on the south by an upheaval to which the Sahara owes its existence. The shores of this former Sea of Sahara are still marked by the shells of the same gastropoda that live on the shores of the Mediterranean. Prof. Oscar Schmidt, Doctrine of Descent and Darwinism, p. 244. 9 Pre-Tertiary Giants. And was followed by the submersion of Plato's little Atlantic island, which he calls Atlantis after its parent continent. Geography was part of the mysteries, in days of old. Says the Zohar, 3, Fol 10a. These secrets, of land and sea, were divulged to the men of the secret science, but not to the geographers. The claim that physical man was originally a colossal pre-tertiary giant, and that he existed 18 million years ago, must of course appear preposterous to admirers of, and believers in, modern learning. The whole posse comitatus of biologists will turn away from the conception of this third-race titan of the secondary age, a being fit to fight as successfully with the then gigantic monsters of the air, sea, and land, as his forefathers. The ethereal prototype of the Atlantean had little need to fear that which could not hurt him. The modern anthropologist is quite welcome to laugh at our titans, as he laughs at the biblical Adam and as the theologian laughs at his pithecoid ancestor. The occultists and their severe critics may feel that they have pretty well mutually squared their accounts by this time. Occult sciences claim less and give more, at all events, than either Darwinian anthropology or biblical theology. Nor ought the esoteric chronology to frighten anyone, for, with regard to figures, the greatest authorities of the day are as fickle and as uncertain as the Mediterranean wave. As regards the duration of the geological periods alone, the learned men of the Royal Society are all hopelessly at sea, and jump from 1 million to 500 millions of years with the utmost ease, as will be seen more than once during this comparison. Take one instance for our present purpose: the calculations of Mr. Krall. Whether, according to this authority, 2,500,000 years represent the time since the beginning of the Tertiary Age, or the Eocene period, as an American geologist makes him say, or whether again Mr. Krall allows 15 million since the beginning of the Eocene period, as quoted by an English geologist. Both sets of figures cover the claims *A. Winchell, Professor of Geology, World Life, p. 369. Mr. Charles Gould, late Geological Surveyor of Tasmania, in Mythical Monsters, p. 84. 10. The Secret Doctrine. Made by the Secret Doctrine * for assigning as the latter does from 4 to 5 million years between the incipient and the final evolution of the fourth root race, on the Lemuro-Atlantean continents, 1 million years for the fifth, or Aryan race, to the present date, and about 850,000 since the submersion of the last large peninsula of the Great Atlantis. All this may have easily taken place within the 15 million years conceded by Mr. Crawl to the Tertiary Age. But, chronologically speaking, the duration of the period is of secondary importance, as we have, after all, certain American scientists to fall back upon. These gentlemen, unmoved by the fact that their assertions are called not only dubious but absurd, yet maintain that man existed so far back as in the secondary age. They have found human footprints on rocks of that formation, and furthermore, M. de Quatrefages finds no valid scientific reason why man should not have existed during the secondary age. The ages and periods in geology are, in sober truth, purely conventional terms, as they are still hardly delineated, and, moreover, Sir Charles Lyell, who is credited with having happily invented the terms Eocene, Miocene, and Pliocene, to mark the three divus ions of the Tertiary Age, ought really to have settled upon some approximate age for his mind. Offspring. Having left the duration of these periods, however, to the speculations of specialists, the greatest confusion and perplexity are the result of that happy thought. It seems like a hopeless task to quote one set of figures from one work, without the risk of finding it contradicted by the same author in an earlier or a subsequent volume. Sir W. Thomson, one of the most eminent among the modern authorities, has changed, about half a dozen times, his opinion upon the age of the Sun and the date of the consolidation of the Earth's crust. In Thomson and Tait's Natural Philosophy, one finds only 10 million years allowed, since the time when the temperature of the Earth permitted vegetable life to appear on it, ap. DETSEQ also transaction Roy. SOC Eden. XXIII, PT1, 157, 1862, where 847 is cancelled. Mr. Darwin gives Sir W. Thomson's estimate as a minimum of 98 and a maximum of 200 millions of years since the consolidation of the crust, CCH. Gould. In the same work, Nat Philosophy. 80 millions are given from the time of incipient incrustation to the present state of the world. And in his last lecture, as shown elsewhere, Sir W. Thomson declares, 1887, that the Sun is not older than 15 millions of years. Meanwhile, basing his arguments as to the limits to the age of the Sun's heat, on figures previously established by Sir W. Thomson, Mr. Krall allows 60 millions of years since the beginning of the Cambrian period. This is hopeful for the lovers of exact knowledge. Thus, whatever figures are given by occult science, they are sure to be corroborated by those of someone among the modern men of science who are considered as authorities. 11. The tropics at the pole. No two geologists or naturalists agree as to the figures. Thus, there is a wide margin for choice offered to the occultist by the learned fraternity. Shall we take for one of our supports Mr. T. Mellard Reed? This gentleman, in a paper on limestone as an index of geological time, read by him in 1878 before the Royal Society, claims that the minimum time required for the formation of the sedimentary strata and the elimination of the calcareous matter is in round numbers 600 million years. See Proceedings of Royal Society, London, Volume XXVIII, p. 281, or shall we ask support for our chronology from Mr. Darwin's works, wherein he demands for the organic transformations according to his theory from 300 to 500 million years. Sir C. Lyell and Professor Houghton were satisfied with placing the beginning of the Cambrian age at 200 and 240 millions of years back respectively. Geologists and zoologists claim the maximum time, though Mr. Huxley, at one time, placed the beginning of the incrustation of the Earth 1,000 million years ago, and would not surrender a millennium of it. But the main point for us lies not in the agreement or disagreement of the naturalists as to the duration of geological periods, but rather in their perfect accord on one point, for a wonder, and this a very important one. They all agree that during the Miocene age, whether 1 or 10 million years ago, Greenland and even Spitsbergen, the remnants of our second or Hyperborean continent, had almost a tropical climate. Now the pre-Homeric Greeks had preserved a vivid tradition of this land of the eternal sun, whither their Apollo journeyed yearly. During the Miocene Age, Greenland, in NLAT 708, developed an abundance of trees, such as the yew, the redwood, the sequoia, allied to the Californian species. Beeches, planes, willows, oaks, poplars, and walnuts, as well as a magnolia and azalea, says science. In short, Greenland had southern plants unknown to northern regions. And now this natural question rises. If the Greeks knew, in the days of Homer, of a Hyperborean land, i.e., a blessed land beyond the reach of Boreas, the god of winter and of the hurricane, an ideal region which the later Greeks and their classics have vainly tried to locate by searching for it beyond Scythia, a country where nights were short and days long, and beyond that land a country where the sun never set and the palm grew freely. If they knew of all this, who then told them of it? In 12 The Secret Doctrine. Their day, and for ages previously, Greenland must certainly have been already covered with perpetual snows, with never thawing ice, just as it is now. Everything tends to show that the land of the short nights and the long days was Norway or Scandinavia, beyond which was the blessed land of eternal light and summer, and to know of this, their tradition must have descended to the Greeks from some people more ancient than themselves, who were acquainted with those climatic details of which the Greeks themselves could know nothing. Even in our day, science suspects beyond the polar seas, at the very circle of the Arctic pole, the existence of a sea which never freezes and a continent which is evergreen. The archaic teachings, and likewise the Puranas for one who understands the allegories of the latter, contain the same statements. Suffice, then, to us the strong probability that a people, now unknown to history, lived during the Miocene period of modern science, at a time when Greenland was an almost tropical land. Note: the reader is requested to bear in mind that the first and the following sections are not strictly consecutive in order of time. In the first section the stanzas which form the skeleton of the exposition are given, and certain important points commented upon and explained. In the subsequent sections various additional details are gathered, and a fuller explanation of the subject is attempted. Book 2. Part I. Anthropogenesis. Stanzas translated with commentaries from the Secret Book of Chien. In primeval times, a maiden, beauteous daughter of the ether, passed for ages her existence in the great expanse of heaven. In primeval times, a maiden, beauteous daughter of the ether, passed for ages her existence in the great expanse of heaven. 700 years she wandered, 700 years she labored, ere her firstborn was delivered. Ere a beauteous duck descending, hastens toward the water mother. Lightly on the knee she settles, finds a nesting place befitting, where to lay her eggs in safety, lays her eggs within, at pleasure. 6. The golden eggs she lays them. Then a seventh, an egg of iron. Kalevala, Rune I. 15 stanzas from the Book of Chien. Anthropogenesis in the Secret Volume. Verbatim extracts *, I. 1. The Lha which turns the fourth is subservient to the Lha of the seven, they who revolve driving their chariots around their Lord. The one I. HL's breath gave life to the seven, it gave life to the first. 2. Said the earth Lord of the shining face, my house is empty, send thy sons to people this wheel. Thou hast sent thy 7 sons to the Lord of wisdom. 7 times doth he see thee nearer to himself, 7 times more doth he feel thee. Thou hast forbidden thy servants, the small rings, to catch thy light and eat, thy great bounty to intercept on its passage. Send now to thy servant the same. 3. Said the Lord of the shining face: I shall send thee a fire when thy work is commenced. Raise thy voice to other lokas, apply to thy father, the Lord of the lotus, for his sons thy people shall be under the rule of the fathers. Thy men shall be mortals. The men of the Lord of wisdom, not the lunar sons, are immortal. Cease thy complaints. Thy 7 skins are yet on thee, thou art not ready. Thy men are not ready. 4. After great throes she cast off her old 3 and put on her new 7 skins, and stood in her first one. N5. The will world for 30 crores more. It constructed rupas, soft stones that hardened, hard plants that softened. Visible from invisible, insects and small lives. She shook them off her back whenever they overran the mother. Only 49 slokas out of several hundred are here given. Not every verse is translated verbatim. A periphrasis is sometimes used for the sake of clearness and intelligibility, where a literal translation would be quite unintelligible. 16. The secret doctrine. After 30 crores she turned round. She lay on her back, on her side. She would call no sons of heaven, she would ask no sons of wisdom. She created from her own bosom. She evolved watermen, terrible and bad. 6. The watermen terrible and bad she herself created from the remains of others, from the dross and slime of her first, second, and third, she formed them. The Dhyani came and looked the Dhyani from the bright father-mother, from the white regions they came, from the abodes of the immortal mortals. 7. Displeased they were. Our flesh is not there. No fit rupas for our brothers of the fifth. No dwellings for the lives. Pure waters, not turbid, they must drink. Let us dry them. 8. The flames came. The fires with the sparks, the night fires and the day fires. They dried out the turbid dark waters. With their heat they quenched them. The Lhas of the high, the Lamayan of below, came. They slew the forms which were 2 and 4-faced. They fought the goat men, and the dog-headed men, and the men with fishes' bodies. 9. Mother Water, the great sea, wept. She arose, she disappeared in the moon which had lifted her, which had given her birth. 10. When they were destroyed, Mother Earth remained bare. She asked to be dried. 3:11. The Lord of the Lords came. From her body he separated the waters, and that was heaven above, the first heaven. 12. The great Kohans called the lords of the moon, of the airy bodies. Bring forth men, men of your nature. Give them their forms within. She will build coverings without. Males females will they be. Lords of the flame also. 13. They went each on his allotted land, 7 of them each on his lot. The lords of the flame remain behind. They would not go, they would not create. 17. The slokas of Jin 4. 14. The 7 hosts, the will-born lords, propelled by the spirit of life-giving, separate men from themselves, each on his own zone. 15. 7 times 7 shadows of future men were born, each of his own color and kind. Each inferior to his father. The fathers, the boneless, could give no life to beings with bones. Their progeny were Buddha, with neither form nor mind. Therefore they are called the Chaya. 16. How are the Manusya born? The Manus with minds, how are they made? The fathers called to their help their own fire, which is the fire that burns in earth. The spirit of the earth called to his help the Sola fire. These 3 produced in their joint efforts a good rupa. It could stand, walk, run, recline, or fly. Yet it was still but a chaya, a shadow with no sense. 17. The breath needed a form, the fathers gave it. The breath needed a gross body, the earth molded it. The breath needed the spirit of life, the solar LHAS breathed it into its form. The breath needed a mirror of its body, we gave it our own, said the Dhyanis. The breath needed a vehicle of desires, it has it, said the drainer of waters. But breath needs a mind to embrace the universe, we cannot give that, said the fathers. I never had it, said the spirit of the earth. The form would be consumed were I to give it mine, said the great fire. Man remained an empty senseless Buddha. Thus have the boneless given life to those who became men with bones in the third. Y18. The first were the sons of Yuga. Their sons the children of the yellow father and the white mother. 19. The second race was the product by budding and 18. The secret doctrine. Expansion, the asexual from the sexless * thus was, Olanu, the second race produced. 20 Their fathers were the self-born, the Chea from the brilliant bodies of the lords, the fathers, the sons of twilight. 21 When the race became old, the old waters mixed with the Frazher waters. When its drops became turbid, they vanished and disappeared in the new stream, in the hot stream of life. The outer of the first became the inner of the second. The old wing became the new shadow, and the shadow of the wing. 622. Then the second evolved the egg-born, the third. The sweat grew, its drops grew, and the drops became hard and round. The sun warmed it, the moon cooled and shaped it, the wind fed it until its ripeness. The white swan from the starry vault overshadowed the big drop. The egg of the future race, the man swan of the later third. First male female, then man and woman. 23 The self-born were the Cheas, the shadows from the bodies of the sons of twilight. 724. The sons of wisdom, the sons of night, ready for rebirth, came down, they saw the vile forms of the first third. We can choose, said the lords, we have wisdom. Some entered the Chea. Some projected the spark, some deferred till the fourth, from their own rupa they filled the kama. Those who entered became arhats. Those who received but a spark, remained destitute of knowledge, the spark burned low. The third remained mindless. Their ivas were not asterisk. The idea and spirit of the sentence is here given, as a verbal translation would convey very little to the reader. 19 The slokas of Jin Reddy. These were set apart among the seven. They became narrow-headed. The third were ready, in these shall we dwell, said the lords of the flame. 25 How did the manas the sons of wisdom, act? They reacted the self-born. They are not ready. They spurn the sweat-born. They are not quite ready. They would not enter the first egg-born. 26 When the sweat-born produced the egg-born, the twofold and the mighty, the powerful with bones, the lords of wisdom said, now shall we create. 27. The third race became the Vahan of the lords of wisdom. It created sons of will and yoga, by Kriyasakti it created them, the holy fathers, ancestors of the Arhats. 828. From the drops of sweat, from the residue of the substance, matter from dead bodies of men and animals of the will before, and from cast-off dust, the first animals were produced. 29 Animals with bones, dragons of the deep, and flying sarpas were added to the creeping things. They that creep on the ground got wings. They of the long necks in the water became the progenitors of the fowls of the air. 30 During the third race the boneless animals grew and changed, they became animals with bones, their chayas became solid. 31 The animals separated the first. They began to breed. The twofold man separated also. He said, let us as they, let us unite and make creatures. They did. 32 And those which had no spark took huge she-animals unto them. They begot upon them dumb races. Dumb they were themselves. But their tongues untied. The tongues of their progeny remained still. Monsters they bred. A race of crooked red hair covered monsters going on all fours. A dumb race to keep the shame untold. The secret doctrine. 933. Seeing which, the Lhas who had not built men, wept, saying 34. The Amanasa have defiled our future abodes. This is karma. Let us dwell in the others. Let us teach them better, lest worse should happen. They did. 35 Then all men became endowed with manas. They saw the sin of the mindless. 36 The fourth race developed speech. 37 The one became two, also all the living and creeping things that were still one, giant fish birds and serpents with shell heads. X 38. Thus 2 by 2 on the 7 zones, the third race gave birth to the fourth race men, the gods became no gods, the sura became a sura. 39 The first, on every zone, was moon-colored, the second yellow like gold, the third red, the fourth brown, which became black with sin. The first 7 human shoots were all of one complexion. The next 7 began mixing. 40 Then the fourth became tall with pride. We are the kings, it was said, we are the gods. 41 They took wives fair to look upon. Wives from the mindless, the narrow-headed. They bred monsters. Wicked demons, male and female, also Kato, Dakini, with little minds. 42 They built temples for the human body. Male and female they worshipped. Then the third eye acted no longer. 1143 They built huge cities. Of rare earths and metals they built, and out of the fires vomited, out of the white stone the slukas of Chian. Of the mountains and of the black stone, they cut their own images in their size and likeness, and worshipped them. 44 They built great images 9 yatas high, the size of their bodies. Inner fires had destroyed the land of their fathers. The water threatened the fourth. 45 The first great waters came. They swallowed the 7 great islands. 46 All holy saved, the unholy destroyed. With them most of the huge animals, produced from the sweat of the earth. 1247 Few men remained, some yellow, some brown and black, and some red remained. The moon-colored were gone forever. 48 The fifth produced from the holy stock remained, it was ruled over by the first divine kings. 49 Who redescended, who made peace with the fifth, who taught and